complement it? Would you ever do like like you want this sort of pickups, these sort of like hardware, and then you're like, oh, but I would like, do you find you're kind of making things to complement what you already have, or are these kind of like just general use stuff that you just want to experiment with?
Just general use stuff for
Okay.
now. I haven't pushed it enough yet because I've never had the time the following years, the previous years, sorry. I didn't really have that much time to fiddle around with electronics because of, reasons.
Yeah.
And so right now I am getting time. I am getting sufficient time to play around with it.
I
I
just
just
was
want to
think
build boxes.
I always wanted to do a custom amp to go with a guitar, and do it out of like the same wood, so it matches, but then something that really kind of complements the whole piece. I'm not too knowledgeable. I'm going to lean heavily on you, Hemel, for that. I need an amp at some point. I need an amp
Sure,
for a guitar, and I'll just make the
sure.
box. I'll just do the woodworking. I won't do the electronics. Somebody else can do that. But
Okay. Well, with pleasure. I already have an amp in mind
yeah.
that I'm working on the schematics right now.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, yeah. It'll be heavily based on an existing preamp, and the amp itself. I'm also working on I don't remember the name of the chip, but I think it's an LM388 3886 chip. That's the amp chip, and so I'm working on circuits for an amp. We'll get something working soon.
Okay, we'll do that. What about orbiter wah pedal giveaway? Would that happen?
That could happen. I've got some ideas. I've got enough, but I've got a new design that I'm gonna hash out, that actually will have more than one inductor in it. So you'll have like a pickup switch, basically, so you can choose your two different voices, which I think is really cool. I've made one before in one of my mods, but this actually will be board mountable, which is cool. I'm excited about that. But yeah, that might happen. We're getting some ideas. We'll give away a couple things in the coming year for sure. Sometime over the summer, I think. I've got a couple ideas.
Nice. I really like those. You're too much a perfectionist, though. Those dipped boxes, those pedals looked really good, but then you were like, no, 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 it's not perfect.
It is true. It is. I am that way. But
Yeah.
I was at one of my other little sort of, I can't call it an invention. I came up with the idea not knowing that somebody had already done it, but they didn't do it very well. But Immersive was talking about Phase 90 clone, and so I came up with this idea to put the old Phase 90 in a wob housing, so you could change the the time live, and it actually has turned into a pretty fun pedal. There are some touring bands out there using this pedal of mine. There are some on the market now. The earlier ones, they were spring loaded and didn't have a switch, so you had to keep your foot on it. But this one, you can cock it wherever you want, and then if you have to switch another pedal on or off during it or walk around, you know. But yeah, that's one of the other things I kind of came up with, and made a ton of these too.
I think Morley did the first phaser that was kind of like that, right?
I think actually I think the first one might have been from Fox in the '60s. And it didn't. I don't. That was the first one I found, and then the next one I found was the MXR makes one. But their early one was the one that didn't have a switch, and it didn't sound as good either to me. This has the old 6 op amp script design inside of it, which I think sounds better to my ears anyway than the newer model ones. But they've upgraded, and they have a new one out there now that does have a switch. They must have listened to people telling them that was a terrible idea. and I haven't got my hands on one of them yet, but I probably will. But these are, it's, I mean, I'm not a huge effects user, surprisingly enough, in my playing. I don't use a ton of different stuff, but phasing is something I use a lot of.
Kind of interesting. When I was playing a lot more, I wanted one of the like a phaser pedal that did that so badly. And I had one of the first pedals I ever bought ever when I was 15 or 16 or something was a Boss PH3, the phase shifter,
Yeah.
and
No.
it had an expression jack in it, so you could hook up an expression pedal to control the rate of the LFO.
Yep.
And I thought that was really cool, but what I really wanted was a phaser that you could use the treadle to control like the where you're at in the sweep instead of using it like an LFO. So you could use a phaser like it was a wah, and nobody makes a pedal like that. So put that on
No.
your put that on your design table. Make me one.
Mm. Yeah, you got me thinking already. That's an interesting
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Yeah,
I thought so. You know.
one of the guys that I've made a couple of these for. It's interesting when I describe this pedal to people, I get two reactions. One of them is just like that RCA dog looking in the speaker, you know, the cocked like, why would you do that, you know? And then the other one is I can see the guitar player putting it to use in his head before I've even finished talking about it. And those are the guys that say, I'll give you money, right? You know, and I'll tell you what, I had one of these on my board for a while because I was just making it for myself. You know, I wasn't really thinking out, you know, beyond that. And every time I would finish one and somebody would come by to pick up their guitar and I'd plug them into my rig so they could test their guitar out. And they go, well, you know, why do you have two wahs? And I'm like, oh, well, that's a phaser. And they turn it on and they're like, I want one, you know. And I'm like, oh, it was, you know, it's going to take me a while to build another one. And they're just like, I'll buy that one. How much is that one? And they just start counting out money. And I'm like, okay, take it. I'll make another one.
Yeah.
So
One of
for
the
the longest time, go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the coolest pedals I ever owned was these kind of like hybrid sort of pedals like that. Is trying to remember exactly what it was called. It was a Dunlop pedal. It was a purple pedal, and the treadle was like silver. And it was called the Tremolo Volume Plus, I think. It had a couple
Mm.
toe switches at the bottom and a couple of knobs at the top, and basically it was I mean, it made sense to me, right? Tremolo and volume, it's the same effect. It's like one has an LFO and one uses a treadle, right?
Mm.
It's kind of like the difference between a wah and an auto wah, except you're controlling volume, right? And so you could use it like a volume pedal, which was neat because I didn't have a volume pedal at the time, and I liked doing the like, you know, combining with the delay and some other stuff and doing like the swells and stuff. I was playing a lot of Incubus covers when I had this thing, and or you could flip the toe switch and it just turned into a tremolo, but the rate of the tremolo you control with the treadle instead of with a knob, right? And it was a really cool pedal, and I got it on eBay, I think. And I remember I was struggling with money, and I was like, this pedal's worth a bit of money. I could actually get out of it what I paid for it, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to sell it. And then I found a guy, I think it was on the Warmouth forums, years ago. He was like, "Hey, everyone, check out my pedal collection." And he was like, he's one of these guys like, what's his bucket from JHS Pedals, Josh, right? He's got like
Oh
a
yeah.
room that's nothing but guitar pedals, and I'm like, "Do you have this one?" He's like, "I don't have that one." I was like, "Do you want it for your collection?" He's like, "Yup." So I sold it to a guy who I know appreciated it, which made me really happy because it was kind of a rare pedal. Um, but it was cool. I always loved that kind of like weird out of the box thinking, especially from a company like Dunlop, which is kind of like they're pretty par for the course, especially today. You know, they don't. A lot of these guys don't do a lot of like weird, sort of one-off kind of production runs of these sorts of things. And
I think that's probably the biggest change in the pedal industry overall of the past like 20 years that I've noticed is that the companies have started to really pay attention to what their customers are saying. And they used to just not care and just say, you'll take what we give you, you know? And and now it really seems like they are paying attention to that feedback and altering what they're making to, you know, to coincide with what people are asking for, which is good business in my opinion. Um, but I think that the interaction and maybe the internet has a great deal to do with that as well, because the information flows so much quicker. But I think that's a super positive thing that we're starting to see is companies listening to what their customers want, altering what they're making, and giving people back what they actually are seeking, and that's awesome stuff.
So, Orbiter, back in the day, how did you get the info before the internet? How was it done? How did people uh, how did people do it?
We had carrier pigeons,
Yeah.
and so no, we called each other. There was these things that you sent through the mail. It kind of like getting a package from Amazon or whatever. But we would write on paper ideas, and we would mail them to people. I know it's hard to understand. The other big thing, I learned ton of what I know about a lot of this stuff. I mean, the internet has been a great help. Don't get me wrong, but books. I think Immersive was holding up a book earlier or something. I do believe, and books, man. The library. The library is pretty awesome. And then also, my my family's into electronic stuff. My brother is also into electronics. My stepmom is very good at this type of stuff. A shout out to stepmom. So stepmom was first woman ever hired by IBM to work on computers and repair computers back in the day. So like I had knowledge around me like this all the time. So it's very helpful.
Was there a lot of experimentation, like people just like, oh, just see if what this does, and something would happen? Like when they were manufacturing, like you're saying they weren't listening to people. Like, what was the like what was being put out that was considered like standard, and was there people modifying things and just experimenting and seeing what they could get out of it?
Yeah, I think some of the bypass circuits are really horrible. Some of the buffer bypasses in some of the pedals are really, really terrible. That's what started me modding wah pedals. Is just like without the true bypass, the pedal just sucks your tone like ridiculous. And I actually, so I use a wah pedal a lot, so it's always plugged in. And one day I didn't have it around, and I just plugged straight into my amp, and I started playing, and I was like, damn, that sounds great. And then I plugged my wah pedal in, and without it being turned on, right, when the wah pedal is off, it's still running through two or three resistors, a couple capacitors, and a transistor when the pedal is turned off, and it just zaps your tone. And so that's what set me on the mission to be like, okay, I gotta either find a better wah pedal or learn how to fix it. And so I started researching and trying to find a way around, the problem. And lo and behold, I discovered some people who had already done it, and I said, "How'd you do that?" And they said, "Here's how I did it." And I took it from there, and that's when I started saying, well, how, if I can do that, how else can I alter it? And then it was a rabbit hole. I mean, it was a rabbit hole that was deep and wide and long, and I spent a lot of time. But I can show you. Hold on a second. So I just too old. Where's the new one? Oh, this is new enough. See if I can get this on camera good enough. So let's see. I don't know if I can get it to focus on there. Oh, hold on. It's backwards. That way. So this, let's see. Other side. This whole section in here. Let's see if I can just, there's like all that stuff. This whole side all of that is buffer, and it all comes out. And if you take all that stuff out and reroute the signal, it just clears it up, man. It makes the thing just like transparent, like, it's night and day. And because of that, though, here, perfect example. Because of that, and everybody modding the crap out of them, uh, Dunlop was smart and started putting out ones that were true bypass, and with some other options, it had some of these other mods that all of us were doing, which is one of the reasons why I don't have to do so many anymore, because there's a bunch of them out there that sound great, so people are less inclined to mod the one they have.
That was my first mod, my first pedal mod. I took the exactly I like it's been, I don't know, 20 years since I did it, and I can remember just looking at you showing the PCB there. I remember it was the few resistors and stuff. I desoldered them all, took them off the board. You don't even have to do that. All you gotta do is basically bypass the bypass, right?
Yeah.
Wire a wire onto the PCB, bypass the whole section, and then I replaced the single pole switch with a triple pole switch, and revelation, put an LED in my wah pedal so I knew when it was on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that was my first pedal mod, and it sounded great. It changed the character of the whole thing,
Oh, yeah.
both on and off, which was pretty great. I didn't add anything to the circuit at all except for an LED, and I put mine on the heel of the pedal, and I
Yeah.
made the mistake of getting one of the like super bright LEDs. So whenever it was dark on stage, I'd click it on. There was like a 12-foot like spotlight on the wall behind me.
Yeah.
Those
The
things
blue
are great, man.
The blue,
Blue
ones
one. It was a blue one, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you can knock those down a little bit. Yeah, but same thing here. Got the LED in top, and then so I have it done up with two different capacitors. I like my wah pedals to go really, really deep, really low range, and so one of these will dump it straight into the basement, and then the other one is more closer to standard. But yeah, that was the big thing too. Having a light, an LED was nice. The nice thing about the bright LED is even if I can't see it up on front, when it's on, there's enough of a glow that I can tell it's on even without seeing the actual light. But a 2K resistor will knock that down quite a bit, which is what I use, 1 or 2K.
I could have just not bought the ultra bright LED,
Yeah, that too.
That would have helped.
But I like
We're
the
talk-
blue bright ones.
We're talking about true bypass, and that's one of the first things that I've done on the pedal also. And what I found interesting is that it might sound simple at one to a point, but it made me discover the JFET switching, which I had no idea existed, and I had the opportunity to study one with the pedal. I don't remember what pedal it was. I think it might have been a TS9 that just had, it didn't have the true bypass. It just had the shitty pedal thing, that's momentary switch hidden inside his plate. So I was asked to change that to a 3PDT for a true bypass, and that's when I noticed the JFETs inside, and I said, well, this is interesting, and how does that work? And so, yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. So it might seem like a stupid or a silly add-on to a pedal. It might not add much, but it adds a lot to the knowledge of how a pedal works. So it's I think it was a good introduction to modding pedals.
So for actually,
Um,
that kind of leads me. If somebody's like wants to start doing some simple modding, like what would you guys suggest as like if somebody wanted to get into doing like just building a simple box, or like what's a good starting point?
LPB1, linear power booster. That's the one that I streamed. The first thing that I streamed is an LPB1 because it's a linear power booster. You have one transistor, a couple of caps, a couple of resistors, and then you have your volume at the end, and that's it. It's a very, very low component, but very effective effect to boost. That's what it says, LPB, linear power booster, and that's basically your initial boost pedal, which also is the basis of first stages in many, many other circuits that will use transistors. Uh, that's the same initial circuit that you'll find in all of those other pedals that have a boost stage initially in that circuit. So start with that. It's an easy build, low cost, and gets you right into it and understanding how transistors work and how it can modify your sound.
I make that recommendation all the time when people ask that question. I tell them that same pedal, that same build, because you have to do you have to do an input, an output, a power supply, a switch. Like all the fundamentals are there, but the PCB itself is very, very simple. So your chances for success are really high, which I think is important if you're just learning. To like actually have it work when you finish is a good thing. Um, Another one, if you're willing to take it a little step further, some of the early fuzz pedals have very few components and can be really easy to do as well. But I would totally go with exactly what Hamill said. I tell people that all the time. A boost, a quick LB boost, always good.
Yeah, I remember my first exposure to the whole DIY pedal thing was when I discovered the Build Your Own Clone website. And that's what they have right on
Mm-hmm.
their website. Their first thing is do the boost first, make the boost pedal, you know? I never did that. But I think my vector into doing all this was a little different. I didn't start making pedals until after I started screwing around with microcontrollers and Arduino and stuff like that, right? So what I would say is if you're just like if your hobby is going to be making guitar pedals, start with a boost. But if you want to do something more broadly with electronics, maybe there's this kit you can buy from about a dozen different online retailers. You know, places like Adafruit or SparkFun or something like that. There's this kind of like a curriculum built around. I think it's 8 tutorials, and it's called Ardix, ARDX, where you get yourself a little Arduino Uno, which is a microcontroller, and you get a bunch of you don't have to own anything, right? It comes with one of those little breadboards and a component pack with your LEDs, a few transistors that fit in line with all these tutorials, and then they'll tell you how to do things like um, well, first of all, program the microcontroller, so you get a little tiny bit of like computer programming in there, or at least how to do it at the embedded level, but then also like, how to use a microcontroller to make an LED blink. So there's a combination of this is kind of how you use a breadboard, and this is how you put the circuit together on a breadboard, and then these are the 4 lines of code you have to write in your little Arduino development environment to flash onto the BIOS chip on the Arduino, and then bam, you can make your LED blink at whatever rate you want, and it's one of those things that I always found really great because it's always really handy for confidence for one, to see an immediate result like that. It's just a blinking light, but it's like you made it blink, and then you change your delay from 500 milliseconds to 50 milliseconds, and now suddenly it's like blinking all spastically, and it's like, wow, I did that, it's cool. And then you start learning about logic gates and all sorts of that stuff, and it really helps you learn how to use a breadboard. And the whole kit cost maybe 60, $80 or something like that. And so that's where I started, was messing around with microcontrollers. And I mean, that kind of stuff, I don't know, I always joke about how guitar players especially are like hardcore Luddites. Everything's got to be the way it was in the 60s. And I mean, I'm there for a lot of it. Tubes do sound better than transistors most of the time. I've got nothing against transistor amps. I got a PV Bandit behind me. I love that amp. It's I know people that just hate it, and they're the Plexi fans probably, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I love that little amp. But anyway, the point I'm trying to get to, I think, is messing around with microcontrollers is a great way to get into it too. Even if guitar pedals is your sort of like end goal, If you're interested in electronics generally, some of those microcontroller kits will be like really good, and especially because then you kind of learn how all sorts of stuff works when you do that. But then again, like I'm also in this situation where my knowledge about electronics and tinkering with this kind of stuff is more broad because of that, and I can't talk shop as easily with people that know their guitar circuits. You know what I mean? Um, but I'm learning. I'm figuring some stuff out, and that's kind of where I started. Arduino, Raspberry Pi, general purpose input output stuff like that. It's a world. I think anything that would inspire somebody to keep going is what you want.
Definitely.
Totally.
So, is there anything you guys want to create that you feel doesn't exist, or isn't explored enough? Is there anything like that you would want to see manufactured that isn't? Is there anything that it's like is the market fulfilling most of the demand for things, or is there still a place for like little like custom one-off things like electronics and stuff?
Well, the
You know-
market's definitely
Go,
saturated.
you start.
Yeah.
No, the market's saturated right now, and the thing is that a lot of the pedals that are out there are the same exact circuit with minor little tweaks, and everybody's just because there's nothing proprietary about these circuits. They're as simple as it gets. They're very, very basic, and so you can't really, patent anything. So as soon as it gets out there, everyone's gonna copy it if they can, which is why like the guy who was doing the clones buried everything in epoxy resin so that it would there would be a little longer to take to before they figured it out and started copying, because he knew what was going to happen. But yeah, I think there's always room for another niche. I think right now it seems like what people or the companies seem to be doing effectively is putting more than one pedal kind of under one hood. Two pedals that complement each other well, and everything is shrunk down enough nowadays where they can squeeze it into one housing. And I think there's going to be a whole heck of a lot more of that in the future. As far as something personal, though, I have a couple ideas, but I'm going to keep those to myself for now. But yeah, it's tough to keep up with these guys who just do pedals all the time. I mean, like you were talking about Josh JHS. I mean, that guy's on fire. The guy's on fire, and he's not afraid to promote other companies and other pedals. And he makes a good product, and it's people like that I think that really like make me feel good about some of the companies that are out there right now. Like I appreciate that guy so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved watching his show, and that's the one thing I like. After I watched it for a while, I realized like he when he's got a new product out, he'll plug it and that kind of thing. But when you watch his pedal show on YouTube, like he's never talking about his own pedals. He geeks out so hard about guitar pedals, and he's just like he's got like the biggest collection in the world, and he's just like, check this out, these guys are awesome. I've got my pedal company, but Electro Harmonics, they've got some cool stuff, or this guy over here, and he's always plugging everybody else, and he's just like he treats it like it's not a competition when as far as business is concerned, like it is, right? But he's just happy. He's so happy to nerd out as hard as he can about guitar pedals.
Well, that's
And
the
it's
thing
like-
is, I think with a lot of, when it comes to technology, that they found that even though you're competing, different companies are competing, you kind of want, when somebody comes up with something new, they actually create new spaces for everyone else to move into. So it's kind of a friendly rivalry. But if somebody does something cool, it's like, oh, they've just created a new market. And you can get in there too. So I think that is ideal for me to have as an industry is where everybody's just stoked and doing their thing, and everyone's just kind of getting inspired from each other and just like, hey, let's do some things, and just seeing where it goes.
Yeah, but it is super rare to have somebody who owns a pedal company, runs a company,
Yeah.
speak constantly telling people to buy pedals from other companies.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you know,
that is a little.
you just don't see that. And I think though, for in a certain way, it endears people to him and probably makes him kind of more likable and more sort of identifiable for certain people, that they say, man, what a cool guy. Man, I let's just throw some money at him because he's such a cool guy, you
Yeah.
know. But it is good to see, and I'm that way too. I mean, I really like to support other people, even if they're doing the same thing I'm doing. When I get overloaded or just can't take on a project, I've got some other guys around my area that I'll, point them to, and they do the same to me a lot of times, especially with some of the pedal repairs and stuff like that, or especially when I was doing the wah thing, I would get phone calls all the time from other techs that would just say, "Oh, I wanted my wah modded," and they said, "Oh, here, I won't even touch it. Just call this guy; he'll take care of you." And I was so thankful for that. Like, that's such a cool thing.
Yeah, I think that kind of comes. I noticed that in the guitar community, it kind of has that. I think it's just because there's a certain camaraderie because everyone it's very niche. So it's rare that you come across somebody who has the same struggles as you. So even if you are competing with them, you have more in common with them than anyone else. So it's like they're a peer,
Yeah.
But what do you say, Hamel? For Hamel to win, does everyone else have to lose?
No. No, for Hemel to win, Hemel just needs to have fun doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. I got a couple of ideas. One idea is that I'm a shitty artist. I cannot. I have trouble making a stick. How do you call them? Stick figure. I have trouble doing that. So I figured that if I want to sell pedals, maybe I could, tell the clients, you send me some artwork and I'll put that on the pedal. Any type of artwork that it's probably already being done, but it's something that I feel that could attract some people saying, hey, I'd like to see that on the pedal. Well, go to Hamel's website. He'll do that for you and he'll create a good pedal for you. Of course, within certain parameters. I mean, I can't have them send me a Monet all completely on this small 1590B stomp box.
Well, that's the
Or
thing. Like, if you're saying like that, a lot of the components are all the same. What makes your pedal different? I know what makes Orbiter's pedals different. He hydro dips them.
That's a really interesting topic of conversation. One of the things that I think lament, I think Orbiter touched on this a little bit, is that once I started getting into the DIY pedal thing, my first thought was looking at the price and being pissed off that I spent so much money as a teenager on guitar pedals when I could have been building them. I think my first purchase of guitar pedals when I was 15 or 16, whenever it was, I think I spent $550 and I bought 3 pedals. I got a Boss Metal Zone, which I know everybody hates, but I friggin' love that pedal. The Boss PH3, the phase shifter, the one I talked about before, and a Dunlop original Crybaby. 3 pedals, over $500. You could build a phaser, a wah, and a rat for what? $110 if you had nothing to start with. And so that was kind of how that was the first reaction I had to doing like this whole DIY pedal journey. And then which sort of morphed into this like, man, all of these companies that sell these PCBs, it's all the same stuff. Phase 90, Phase 45, Rat, Muff, Tube Screamer, it's like all the same stuff. Because those are the circuits everyone has known for decades, right? And I was like, well, what if I want to recreate this weird, funky, like, because the phase shifter from Boss did more than just rise and fall. It also had like this step thing that would step up and down through the LFO, or it would do like the shepherd's tone thing where it would start at the top and just fall and then fall and fall. It would never rise, or it would go the other way. And I was like, I want features like that. That's why I loved that phaser so much, because it made a bunch of different sounds, right? And none of the classic circuits ever did that stuff. And everyone's kind of focused on these things. And I was like, well, how does how do you do this stuff? People used to tell me, oh, boss pedals are all digital. They're not. But like, nobody wants to reverse engineer them, figure out what the circuit is, and then start selling PCBs for a, that boss pedal from the 90s, like, it's not part of the cultural zeitgeist of like guitar players at this point, right? And so that was something I always kind of wanted to, like, hoped I could explore at some point, was to find out there's some pedals that are classics by today's standards that weren't classics when I started playing, but you can't find them on the PCB sites, right? And my favorite site to buy PCBs is a site called Mad Bean.
Yes.
Mad Bean. And that guy, he's got very detailed PDFs on how to populate the board and all the different little mods that you can do to his designs. He sets it in there. He's like, you don't have to use this component or this component. Leave them blank. Don't put anything in them. Maybe switch this diode to this value or whatever. Use an LED instead or whatever. Or he'll add things like a switch to change, symmetrical or asymmetrical clipping to your tube screamer, which is something old tube screamers didn't have, right? And so I think that there's definitely room, especially because the circuits are so well known by now, that once you kind of start to learn the basics of the electronics as you're building them, the circuits, understanding circuits, like a rectifier is a rectifier is a rectifier, you're gonna from a theoretical level, right? And so even like we're talking about Josh, right? None of his pedals are groundbreaking. They're old circuits. He's modified them to do certain things, add features that he thinks is cool, and it's like, there's the JHS version. Might not be any different from the old version, other than it has an extra switch on it or something like that, right? And so people have been innovating on those old designs forever, and sometimes they're like Mad Bean. He innovates, throws it on a PCB, and he doesn't build pedals. He'll sell you a board for $5, tell you to do it yourself. Or, like I said, guys like Josh, who'll, I don't know, is it innovation or is it just iteration? I don't know, but there's always gonna be somebody who wants a guitar pedal, At least I hope, because the day there isn't, we're all out of business. So
no, guitar pedals aren't going anywhere. They keep trying to put the guitar pedal away and make an amp that does everything, and there's a certain amount of people that will use that, but the guitar pedal's not going anywhere. It gives us something to collect. They're like Hot Wheels for guitar players, right? Oh, got to have this one. Oh, but that one has something extra, and and then you have guys like Keeley, who for a long time, basically made made his mark by modifying other people's pedals, because there was other tones that could be found within there, or fixing little things that could sound better, and then of course going on to making his own pedals and stuff. But it's one of those things that I think one of the reasons why so many of the pedals that are like the stock and standard pedals, and this goes probably for amps and guitars as well, is that most of the time the majority of people are chasing a tone of someone that they've heard that they really like, and so they're trying to emulate or get this certain, be it Gilmour or Hendrix or Page or whoever, your favorite guitar player here. And so they look to the gear that those people use and start chasing after that. And so that's why a lot of these classic pedals that have been around forever are going to stick around, because the people want to sound like somebody who always used a tube screamer. Guess what? They're going to want to go out and buy a tube screamer. Might not be, It might not be the Ibanez nowadays. It might be one of the boutique ones, but they're still going to end up, buying something that is familiar to their ear, which I think is one of the things that drives the market too. I think um, that the familiar sound makes people happy and they can identify with it, and that makes you play more and maybe write more. And who knows how it'll inspire you, but yeah. But new and quirky pedals, I think, are coming, though. I think the younger generation is going to push us out of this little bit of rut that we're in. I think they're more flexible than us old guys who are like, no, must must have come from the '60s, or I don't want it.
I mean, look at Strymon, right? There's a great example. I'll bet you that's a pedal you couldn't take apart and reverse engineer. Because there's probably so much software in that thing, you know. And I know of guys that use those things like crazy, and those are like you were talking about, like the 2-in-1 sort of thing. Well, these are like 5-in-1, or and it's not even like, that's the one thing I was actually really surprised with. Like the day I discovered like the multi effects processor was like the best day ever, because I was one of those kids when I was playing that I had my pedal board was like 8 feet wide, because I just kept putting pedals on as I bought them, and trying to do the tap dancing thing. It was impossible, and it's like, what, you mean I can buy this thing where I can switch 5 effects by hitting one button? Like, great, you know. But these new pedals aren't even like that. They're just like something somebody dreamed up. There's something completely new, and Strymon is the first thing that comes to mind with that. Like, they've got like these dedicated stomp boxes that are an effect. They're not multi effects. They're an effect. But it's like they're the only people that make it, because they wrote the code that's running the computer inside the pedal,
Yeah.
and combined it with all the other like analog bits of the circuit as
Is
well.
that?
And
Do you think that's going to be the future? Is like digital programming with it?
I
That
think
will
it
be
was I think it was the future 5 years ago.
I that is the open road. I think that's the one place. I mean, what we're seeing now, right, with the amplifiers, even where you can log on to the website and download all these different tones, like the Boss Katana or whatever it is. I think that's the future.
I've got
And
one.
people, yeah. See, we picked up one for my buddy Beck. We just went to go buy the guitar, but the amp was basically thrown in for free, which worked out great. I don't think he's really using it, but him being more of a techie kind of guy, being able to download different sounds and different voices off the internet for an amp. I mean, that's something that as a kid, I'd be like, what the hell? You're out of your mind. But here we are. But I do think that you know that's something that's been happening for a while. The multi effects units, the whole. I mean, when I was coming up through the '90s and stuff, like the rack of gear and the Bradshaw switching and all that stuff was all brand new. People were all about it, and it was a way to get multiple amounts of tones from one unit. I noticed a lot of the people that I've seen that came from that kind of era, uh, like kind of went backwards and found the pedals that basically made the sounds that their multi effects processors made, and switched from a multi effects processor to like 3 or 4 pedals. And so I was like, oh, you're transgressing. You're totally going backwards, compared to what I did, and but I do think those are the kind of things that the innovation is going to happen. There's so much open road that can happen there, and as they make the tones better, this is the thing. You can have a multi effects unit that does all bazillion things, but if it doesn't do any of them great, people will get bored. So as they make these sounds better and better and better, along with the amps as well too, like then people will be more inclined to stick with it and go that route. It's definitely more cost effective to buy a multi effects processor, but
What about with pickups as well, like more digital pickups, electronics in your pickups and sound? Is what's your ideas on that? Like the Fishman stuff that they're doing now.
Well, the Fluence pickups, there's nothing digital about them that I know of. I don't think. It's really just that it's as far as I understand it, it's like a pancake of printed circuit boards that make up the pickup or something. There's some weird bit of technology in there, and but it's still all kind of like analog circuitry. I remember. Do you guys know who Fluff is? Have you Riffs, Beards, and Gears? That guy on YouTube. Um, he's a guitar YouTuber. He put a video out a while back. I remember watching it, and he was talking about what he thought was like the biggest innovations in like guitar pickup technologies since the electric guitar became a thing. And he was like, number one was like the humbucker, like that was like a revelation when it happened. And I can't remember. He said he thought of 3 stages. I want to say one of them was active pickups, but I don't think that was it. But at the end, he was like like the Fluence, right? And Fishman has the patent, the trademark, whatever. And it's some kind of weird new technology. You know, they're not active pickups in the way that we think of active pickups, like the EMG flavor kind of thing. But they require power, so people think they're active pickups. But they're like,
Well, that's
it's
the thing
something
on those.
weird.
Like, have you seen
What's that?
the pickups on like the Acoustasonic? It's like it has like a digital processor in it, or like
Oh,
it picks up the sound in the guitar. It's a Fishman technology, and it's like it like just picks up the sound and then turns it into a dreadnought and turns it into an OM or something. Like it just synthesizes the
interesting.
sound. So it's basically like it's not like, yes, there's acoustic qualities of those guitars, but it's the pickup system. Like they have a humbucker in them, but then they also have these Fishmans in there that are digitally processing the acoustic sound and outputting it as a like to make it sound like a dreadnought. So it's kind of strange in a way, because to try and combine that into your electric guitar. But that's kind of, I don't know, like that's just something that Fender is exploring right now, and they're like, oh, acoustic electrics, let's see if that's what the market wants. So, and that's mostly due to the pickups in them that are making those possible.
Yeah, that is going to happen. That so back in the 60s and I think in the 70s they tried, right, to integrate some effects and stuff and on board, and it was never very successful. But as they're able to do this sort of micro technology and build these things very, very small and very light and probably more durable now, I would think. I do believe that the future is going to see a lot of onboard type stuff.
It's an interesting place for people to innovate because, like I said, guitar players, by and large, are they're kind of Luddites. Um, I think of stuff like I didn't know about this. What'd you call it? Acoustasonic or something?
Yeah, it was the Fender
Yeah.
Acoustic Sonic. I did a bunch of research into it just because I was like, I
Mm.
was intrigued by the idea. And I was like, what is this thing and how does it work? And it was like, is this like, I'm just not 100% sold on if that's the future, but they're making a push for it. They're saying this is what we're doing, and they put a
There's
lot of
been
resources behind it. But it seems to me, the more I looked into it, it wasn't the guitar design, it was the Fishmans in it that make it what it is. It's the pickups. It's not like they just hollowed out a telly and put a spruce top
right.
on it. Like it's like that doesn't make it an acoustic guitar.
hmm I think,
Yeah.
I mean, what I find encouraging is that they're innovating. Fishman's a big company. They got money for R&D. And maybe someday when I'm rich, I will buy a pickup of theirs or something, but I mean, it's also like I think back to the 90s. I mean, cuz I grew up in the 90s, right? And I think about like the guitar technologies that came and went, and part of it was that we weren't ready. Another part of it is that digital sucked in the 90s, like really bad, you know? I don't have a I don't have a katana. I've got a positive grid bias amp, right? Completely different paradigm. Like behind me, you can kind of see it over my shoulder here. I got a 412. It's a Rivera. I drove to Santa Monica to buy that amp. From Alberta. Right?
Wow.
And there's interesting things about it that kind of change the paradigm of what a guitar amp is. A high gain, I knew I wanted a high gain, like 100-watt tube amp. What I really wanted was a diesel, like a VH4. Those things are bloody expensive. You got to order them from Frankfurt or whatever is where they build those things, and it's like $5,000 American just for the head or something like that. This thing was expensive enough. You know what I mean? I think I paid 2,200 US for it in, I don't know, 2005 or something, back when that was before the exchange rate flipped into favoring the Canadian dollar, so it was way more than that by the time I plopped it down on my credit card. But it's got MIDI switching in it, right? So it doesn't use a foot switch, it uses a MIDI controller to switch channels, and it runs on you program your MIDI foot controller to do program change messages, and you can change every parameter on the amp that can switch in one foot switch press. I can change it to channel 3, turn off the boost, turn on the reverb. I can switch it to the clean channel, turn on the boost, and turn on the reverb or whatever, And that was kind of a neat thing for me. It's even got a dial in the back so you can tell it what MIDI channel for it to be, and it's got a pass through so you can keep the chain going and hook up the other MIDI stuff. The MIDI doesn't affect the sound at all. It's just the switching logic inside the amp. That was kind of neat. It's also got a high pass filter knob on it and a subwoofer output. Rivera used to make this subwoofer that kind of was the size of a 212 cabinet you could stick underneath the 412, and you could dial in your high pass circuit so that your 412 cabinet wouldn't try to recreate the same frequencies that your subwoofer, which was powered, would do. And then you plug that thing in, it just sounded like thunder. Like this is exactly the amp that I bought 15, 20, almost 20 years ago for doing my baritone thing, because it's almost like a hybrid bass and guitar amp when it's used that way, or it can just run that way itself. And then a few years back I saw what was going on with like the Axe effects and what else, the Kemper, this stuff that Orbiter was just talking about. And I got in on the positive grid bias amp because it was a little less than half the price of those. I got in on a pre-order for it, and suddenly this thing's a 600-watt Class D amp. Like, guitar players don't play amps like that, or at least they never used to, right? And I can load up the software on my computer and be like, I think I want to try this transformer instead, and I've got like digital recreations of them, and I swap all the components in the amp until I get the sound I want, or I shove a microphone down the throat of this amp, and it'll create a model for me that makes this thing sound like that amp as best as it can. And it's just such a big paradigm shift, right? But then I think about, like, that's like digital's finally getting good for guitar players, which is why you've got the Strymons and the positive grids and the Axe effects, or whatever the company makes the Axe effect. I can't remember what they're called. Fractal, no. Yeah, Fractal? I don't remember the name. Anyway, but you think back to the tech that was coming out in the 90s, right? Roland, I think of all the time, because they were trying to like really push a lot of stuff, especially because Roland owns Boss. Boss had all those pedals. They were doing the multi-effects units and stuff like that. And then they pioneered this idea of the guitar synth, right? Which I think is really cool, right? You got this divided pickup where each string has its own pickup, and you don't use it necessarily for the audio, just for the information. So you got a piece of gear that can listen to each string and determine what note you're playing, and then convert that into MIDI data, and then you can shove that into a synthesizer that you play simultaneously with your guitar. Cool, but the tracking sucked. The only person I can think of that really did a good job of it was Amir Durak from Orgy. He was like a pioneer of that kind of stuff, but it never took off. And then Roland decided to take it a different direction. Instead of trying to synthesize, like plug it into a synthesizer, they came out with, does anybody remember the VG99? Does that ring a bell? It was this effects processor that wasn't a stomp box. You'd stick it on like a mic stand or something like that, and it had it had all the little like the stuff that Roland used to put on their synths. It had a D beam, like the infrared like distance thing, and it had one of those ribbon controllers you could slide your fingers on and tap and stuff like that. Other than that, it was like a regular old Boss GT guitar effects processor. But it took a signal from a 13-pin MIDI cable because your guitar that you used with it was supposed to have one of those Roland GK divided pickups. And what it would do is it would let you retune your guitar digitally without tuning it physically. And it would add in a bunch of these crazy effects that you couldn't do on a normal kind of guitar setup because it would digitally process each individual string. And so you could do things like arpeggiate chords and by strumming them once and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, that's like, it's taking this technology that they started that didn't go anywhere and then converted it into more of a like guitar player centric sort of application. And that was really cool. And it didn't take off. Right. And then Gibson started with their robot guitar stuff and that didn't take off. And, you know, and then you get into stuff like going back to the whole like divided pickup paradigm. You got Line 6 doing their Variax guitars. And I'm actually kind of sad that that's done because maybe they weren't really great guitars, but the technology was cool. And at least from a luthier standpoint, I loved watching guys do Variax transplants because the guitars were boring. But when you tear them apart, pull all the guts out, build a really nice guitar and put those guts in it, suddenly you got this like really nice Variax. You know, you twist a knob. Oh, we're playing single coil Strat style. Oh, now it sounds like a Tele. Oh, now it sounds like a Les Paul. You know, I don't know how effective that really was. I never owned one. As a luthier, I always thought it'd be really cool to offer that as like a service. Like, I'll transplant your Variax into a good guitar. But I don't know. Like, so many of these technologies, they kind of came and went. Partly because like we didn't really have the technology to make it plausible and sound good, especially when I think of like 90s multi-effects pedals, which we do now. Case in point, Axe FX, Kemper, Positive Grid, Boss Katana, that kind of stuff. They actually sound good now. Line 6 Spider, maybe not, but
Do you think that has a lot to do with just the processing power is better now? Like the chips in it are faster, so it doesn't have to compress the sound as much in order to process it. Because like that's the thing with the older tech. It has to compress it and process it, so it's a lower quality digital interpretation than what we have now. And that's always the criticism of like digital up until now, where they actually have better. It's not as the compression is a lot less destructive on the sounds than they were.
Processing, miniaturization. Orbiter said, you know, just like what was the word used? Like just robustness. You know, doesn't just break on you. I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors. We're just better at tech now than we were 25 years ago. But I think you had your hand up there for a sec. Looked like you had like a bright idea.
No. What I was gonna just add to what you were saying is the effects and the processors and the pieces of gear. Let's just generalize, okay? The pieces of gear that sound good don't go away. The ones that don't sound very good slide off the map, which is why we still play a Telecaster, a Les Paul, a Strat. It's why those old Fender amps are still around. If they didn't sound good, people would have thrown them in a dumpster. And the reason why a lot of that stuff in the middle didn't catch on is because it just didn't sound very good. Great idea, great innovations, but if it doesn't sound good, people won't keep playing it.
Maybe that's, I mean, who knows? I think the VG99 conceptually was a really great idea. And you're right, it didn't sound any better than any of the other Boss gear. You know, it was just it was an innovative way to kind of think about it, right? Maybe today, if they tried again,
yeah,
it might be better. Who knows?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think as they come up with things, if they come up with these multi units that sound great, people will use them. It really just does come down to that simple thing. It's got to sound good.
Mhm.
I have
I mean, even with
I have a pitch writer. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a converter to put your. It's like a pickup that you put under your guitar, and it converts the audio signal to a MIDI signal
Oh
inside.
wow!
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. But I tried looking it up. It never took off because it sounds like crap. It doesn't sound good at all. And
That's,
most of the time, there's some crazy adjustments that you need to do. Like you can't just it's not plug and play at all. You need to set it up. You need to have your guitar exactly tuned, exactly 440. You can't go 432 or anything, or else the equipment's going to be all messed up. And but the sounds inside the module are just terrible, and it's not something you can't just add sound cards or anything like that. It's whatever sounds are inside, those are the sounds that you get. And yeah, the same thing with a guitar processor GP50 or GP30 or something like that that I also have, and the sounds are okay. I mean, I kind of like that digital sounding thing for a specific type of music. But if I want to play like sometimes if I'm trying out writing prog songs, then some sounds off the GP30 or 50, they sound great when I pair them with my Juno DS from Roland with my keyboard. And there's some great sounds that pair together very well. It doesn't sound acoustic and digital, and you can totally hear the difference. The two sounds blend together well. But if I want to cover a Queen song, I'm not going to use that guitar processing thing. I'm going to use some simple pedals and my Vox amp and try to be as close to, albeit not close enough because I'm not that great of a guitar player, but uh, or singer or piano player or whatever. Uh, but yeah, you get a sound that's closer to the original than if you started to use anything else, digital, anything else that's digital compared to analog.
What's on the horizon? Is there anything that's being developed right now that you guys are into? Like, what should we be looking out for? Is there anything that you think is coming down the pipes right now, but it hasn't been released yet?
Windows 12. No,
I can't say that I know anything about what's gonna come out. I think mostly what I'm trying to pay attention to is like I keep using the term because it's like the best way I can think of to describe it, but it's like a paradigm shift, you know? Buying the amp that you can plug into your computer with a USB cord and download amps onto, right? Like that's kind of this weird thing, right? There's a lot of stuff going on YouTube right now with YouTube guitar players being like, guys, stop fighting and arguing about like tone wood and all this kind of stuff. Like, take a look at your speakers, you know? Um, there's a lot of guys very recently, like within the last 6 months, who have done huge speaker shootouts. And it's like a lot of guitar players don't want to admit, like, your speaker forms so much of your sound, and we've all kind of been playing on this like really level playing field because the paradigm is the 12-inch Celestion Vintage 30, right? Every once in a while, people are gonna be like, "Oh, I want to use a greenback or T75 or whatever." I got a couple projects. You asked about projects. I didn't even think about this stuff, but I got a couple of speaker cabinet projects on the go. I'm gonna get started on pretty soon here. That the 412 in my Rivera 412 Vintage 30s. But I've got when I bought that Bandit, the guy I bought it from on eBay had put a T75 in it, which is a speaker I'd never used, right? But I fell in love with that amp with the original like PV Scorpion speaker, and he was like, "Oh, I popped it in and everything, and that's how it's set up." And I was like, "Do you have the original speaker?" He's like, "Yeah, I can send along if you want." You know, it's a PV Scorpion, so it's not some fancy aftermarket third party thing. He didn't think it was worth anything. So he just sent it to me along with the amp. First thing I did when I got it was I swapped the speaker back, and I got this spare Celestion that I didn't know what to do with. So I looked around and listened to tone demos, and I settled on an Eminence Swamp Thing. So I'm gonna build myself a 212 cabinet with a Celestion T75 and an Eminence Swamp Thing. Nobody has a cabinet that is configured that way. It's gonna sound way different when I play my guitar through that thing. And then one of the other things I want to do is the Bandit. As much as I love the amp, it is really friggin' heavy for a 112 combo. I don't know what it is they put in the wood they built those cabinets out of, but I was like, if I'm really interested in recording, I like to tweak and move things back and forth. I want to like decombo that amp. I want to make myself a little micro head with the chassis, and then take the speaker out. And I figure if I really want that like idiomatic PV sound, if such a thing exists, then I might as well go and scour eBay for a used Sheffield speaker, which is what PV uses in most of their guitar stuff nowadays. And they moved the Bandit over from the Scorpion to the Sheffield when they came out with their trans tube stuff, like turn of the century kind of thing. And I'll make a 212 combo with the PV Scorpion and the PV Sheffield. And then they're like, there's my PV sound. And when I'm messing around in the studio, I can hook my Rivera up through the PV speakers or through my weird Eminence Celestion combo cabinet and play with things that way. And I think that it's like the rethinking of how we think of gear is what I'm really more excited about as like the community at large, right? We're challenging ideas that we had previously about what makes good guitar tone and pushing that idea to maybe that's going to help the companies innovate something in a way. I got my positive grid bias amp, right? It's got a switch on it. What is it? What does it say? Cab sim or something like that, right? A guitar speaker is a filter. That's all it is. And I mean, I'm a digital audio nerd. That's what I went to school for, so I understand filters and all that kind of stuff. And a speaker, a VST, a filter is a filter, right? And these amps, they model a speaker and turned it into a filter, and you have a switch, so you can make the amp sound like it's a raw amp plugged into a PA speaker, or you can flip the cab sim on it, because guitar speakers are different than most like general purpose speakers. They're not the same kind of speakers you find in your stereo or in a PA system. Well, I don't know if you can see it on the camera. If you kind of can. It's right here. I've got a rack that I built. That's where my amp usually goes when I'm gigging. Right below it, there's a speaker cabinet that I built. I got the blueprints off a website called greenboy.us. There's this guy, calls himself Greenboy. I think his name's Dave. Greenboy is his, internet persona. And his story was that he couldn't find a bass cabinet that he liked. So he did a ton of research, and he designed his own. He designed a whole line like he was starting a company, and he released them all on the internet for free. And he said, build, my children, go and do the thing. He was like, but don't you dare sell anything you build or I'll sue you, because they're my designs, kind of thing, right? And because he was letting it out for free. And so I built one. I've got a cabinet behind me that is a 12-inch woofer, a 6-inch mid-range driver, and one of those like harsh, crazy tweeters, right? I built my own crossover for it. And it's a full range, it's a PA speaker, basically. And that's what I use with my amp now, because my amp has a little cab switch. I switch it on, and it turns into a guitar cabinet. Or if I don't want to play guitar, I load in a Galleon Kruger model into the amp, and I put my bass into it. It does double duty. It does whatever I want to do. It does whatever I want it to do, and that's pretty neat, And it's at least as loud as this monster, and it actually kind of sounds better in some ways, because like Orbiter said, if it doesn't sound good, it's out, right? And so I've got this cabinet that is a lot lighter, a lot smaller, at least as loud. It's rated, I think, at 900 watts. And my amp is 600 watts, so I can crank it all I want. It'll be fine. And it does double duty as a guitar amp, a bass amp. I could hook up a regular like a crown amp or something, just some linear amplifier, and it could be a PA speaker. That's kind of new. We've never had that before in guitar land. And because we have to have our own little idiom, the guitar players call it an FRFR, full range, full response speaker, because that's not what guitar cabinets are. They're not full range, full response. They filter it down. And I think I get excited more for like I don't know what technology is coming up, but I get excited about the idea that guitar players are changing because the gear is starting to change, and
So
we're not
what
going to
you
get into quite so many arguments about things that are just
well,
like
can we still
opinion,
argue
you know?
about tone wood? So what you're
Uh,
saying is tone wood doesn't matter. Everything I do doesn't matter.
Hank's trying to start a war.
I hear people
I'll
say
die
that,
on that. Sorry.
but I'll add. Well, to answer one of your questions, your PV's heavy because it's made from particle board, and so it's super heavy. I had a half stack PV from back in the day, and it was a beast. I mean, it was built like a tank. It never failed. It worked flawlessly for years and years. But I'm happy I don't have it anymore. The other thing I just wanted to comment on with the speaker, totally agree with the speaker things. You can definitely alter your tone so much from it, but there is a pairing that's important to pay attention to. Because right now, as you said, people just love the Vintage 30. They use it in everything. It's all over the place. And I bought an amp not too long ago, and I was really struggling to get uh, the tones I was desiring from it. And I was honestly, I was this close to getting rid of it. And then I had an old Marshall cab here, and some of my first streams actually was me rebuilding this cabinet, and I filled it with greenbacks, and I hooked that 412 greenback speaker instead of the 412 vintage 30s up to this amp that I was struggling with, and instantaneously got the tones I was searching for. So not only is it a speaker thing, but it's sort of like the pickup thing where finding the right pickup in the right guitar and getting that happy marriage going is where the magic is. And it takes a long time sometimes to search that out and find it, but it's a very good point. Speakers not all created equal, and there's a lot of you can open your tones up from the same amp just by switching that up. And it is one of those things that people do not change all that often.
There's a thing also we were talking about earlier. It's the fact that Les Paul, they sound good, or Fenders, they all sound good, and that's why they're still here. But it's like making food. It's like making food. You have your different recipes, and when you try to sell something, I don't think you can put a patent on a list of ingredients. I mean, shepherd's pie is made from a specific list of ingredients, and if you try to add something new, it's no longer a shepherd's pie. Just an example. So if you try to make a simple boost and you try adding a clipping stage to it, then it's no longer a simple boost. Also, whatever sounds great to somebody's ears might not sound as great to somebody else's ears. The same thing as with food. So if you sell your product that'll taste great to somebody and tastes awful to somebody else, how can you then figure I'm going to make something that'll please to the masses? That'll please the masses, that'll be great for everybody. How can you figure something out when you take a new when you want to put a new product online or on the market? And I think that the best way to deal with that question is to just go with your gut feeling and hope that people are like it. And if they don't, then you modify your recipe to try something else. I don't know what's your take on that.
I
Anyone?
use the food uh, comment all the time. I think it's totally apt. Not, I mean, you could serve the same dish to 100 people, and 33 of those people are going to think it's not salty enough. 33 of those people are probably going to think it's just right, and 33 of people think it's going to need some salt. Like it just, there is no pleasing everybody. So the trick is to make something that you think is awesome, and the people who have like-mindedness and discover it will come find you. You know, it's something, I think I said that to you, Hank, for early on. I was like, just, you know, follow your heart, build what you build, and the people who line up with your way of thinking will seek you out and find you. You know, that's just kind of how it works. I think trying to make a Big Mac or something that's going to please every single person out there is not, I mean, if you're only in it just to make money and that's all you want to do is just sell a bazillion pedals or something, that's one way to go. But I think, you know, in this day and age, like the idea is to make something that just sounds super good to you, and the other people who find it also tasty are going to come belly up to your buffet, you know?
I was gonna make a joke about how I don't know how to please the masses. I only serve the left-handed baritoner crowd. But,
Yeah.
I got one for you though.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You're a sound doctor. You're not a tone chef. Everybody's approaching. Yeah.
No, I think what that's it. Orbiter's got it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's there.
like with me with my weird like Celestian Eminence combo thing. Like I don't know if those speakers are matched at all. I relish the indeterminacy of stuff like that. You know, I'm gonna build a guitar. I'm gonna throw some stuff at it, see how it sounds, and then I'm gonna find a way to enjoy whatever comes out of it, you know, but that's a personality thing. I don't chase tones like you were talking about earlier, Orby, about people buying the pedals that they know their idols use on those recordings or whatever, you know, and there was an aspect of that to me too. I mentioned Incubus. Mike Einziger is one of my guitar heroes, assuming I even said his name right, but you know, and so I bought the same gear that he did, and it was a lot of Boss pedals, you know. You know, but maybe these days my thought process is a little different, and I'm just gonna like build whatever I think is cool, and if somebody likes it, then great. Because yeah, I think it's like it's the idiomatic thing. We're putting our personality into these things, and that's what people are gonna gravitate towards. And meanwhile, I mean, Hank, you and Manny and I were talking about this on a call one day. I think Manny's in chat, right? We were talking about as like this group that we've got, you know, the Luthier Uprising. Where we spend so much time promoting each other because we're all just great dudes, you know. If a customer comes to me and says, I want you to build me, you know, a 2-spec classic Les Paul kind of thing, and I want it all hand built or whatever, I'm not going to build that guitar for them. I'm going to send it to Manny or somebody, right? I'm like, this guy will take care of you and what you want because I'm not your guy, you know. And it's almost like who can be the most honest about that? Like, you're the winner in a way, you know? Because I don't know, like we're here talking about electronics tonight, right? But I mean, at the same time, we're playing with guitars. You know, where else, Hemel, were you gonna go to get a guitar made completely from Canadian maple than some weird beardo on the west coast of Canada, you know? And so like that's the idiom, you know, it's kind of like that's what's winning these days.
Well, I also think it's pretty hard to be like kind of the master of everything. Like it's you have to kind of lean on others and their expertise. Like for me, like I don't have much input in electro. I'm not going to tell you about pedals and things. So like if I have questions, I'll do the same thing. Like if somebody has a question about this, I'll just be directing them. It's like, oh, go to Orbiter's stream, go to Hamill's stream, go talk to Immersive about baritones. I don't know, like I think that that's just kind of normal. Like, and there are so many components to making music, and I think we give a lot of credit to like a guitar player that they're like, oh, like you were saying, like your hero guitar player, like they just knew everything they were doing at any moment with all those pedals, and like they were just masters of it. And really, you don't know, like they were just they got it. A friend gave it to them. They threw it. They brought it to the studio and riffed some stuff off. Like it may not have been as profound as people make it out to be. And there's a lot of people behind the scenes producing and stuff, really tweaking that stuff. So you never know really what went on in the studio either to make that sound.
Totally. I say that to people all the time. I mean, people might have a signature amp from these guys or a signature guitar from those guys, but what they used on the record in the studio when no one was looking, you don't know. You just don't know.
You're wrong, Orbiter. It was the germanium diodes and the Soviet capacitors.
Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. What's everybody's opinion? Hemel, what's your opinion on Soviet capacitors?
Boy. They lack mojo. They have mojo. I don't know.
Do capacitors have an impact on the sound of your guitar?
Yes.
How so?
Well, it depends on where it is. If it's on your tone pot inside your guitar, if it's in the pedal, where it is in the pedal circuit. Different capacitors will have different not behaviors but roles on on the audio signal that'll start from your string being strummed to the woofer or the speaker that'll vibrate on the amp. You can have capacitors that are there for filtering any high pitch frequencies or low pitch frequencies. You can have some capacitors filtering out some electricity, some DC that's been input into your circuit, because a capacitor will block DC, but it'll let AC through, and AC looks like this. There's sine waves, and what also looks like that are sound sound waves. So yes, capacitors will have an impact on your sound, most definitely. So this is basically how it'll have an impact. It'll either be used as a filter or cut out some DC or just round out basically your sound, either at the beginning of when you strum your string, or until the end where it reaches your speaker.
So, Orbiter, when I'm wiring a guitar, I keep it really simple, and I just kind of leave it for the player to just add effects pedals and all their things. What about you? Do you add anything special, or unless the customer asks for it, or how do you keep your wiring when somebody's just like, wire up these two humbuckers? Like, what do you do?
It definitely depends on who I'm working with and what they're seeking. I have some guys that are very specific, and I'll come in and they'll want me to do orange drops and certain certain things. Other times, especially with the younger players, and also the younger players are often being more careful with their money, and so I do try to get a read from the person. So a lot of times I will leave it stock and just put, I'll swap it out unless they ask, and I'll it's a conversation that we definitely have. It seems like the younger guys just want, the basics and aren't quite, caught up in this capacitor or that capacitor or whatever. It's an interesting thing. It seems like as we go farther down the road of playing guitars and playing with effects, and we learn about all these things that we're supposed to do, quote unquote, But yeah, I have guys with very specific needs, and other guys with that just want a pup swap, or I've got a dead volume pot, help me out, or I'm repairing, right? So they just want it to be a lot of times they just want it to be back working again so they can go on their way and get to the gig and play their guitar. Other guys, I get guys that come in with brand new Les Pauls and they want me to go through and change everything, and I will do that if that's what they want. But if I'm wiring it up from scratch for people, I usually like to use the orange drop caps. I think they sound good. They have that good vintage tone. I don't think you need to go all the way back to the old Bumblebee ones really to get that, but those do offer a little bit more of a vintagey vibe. But I think the orange caps are the best of both worlds. They're still pretty high quality. They're consistent and they sound good. And they're easy to get, which is also another thing. But yeah, caps. But caps do make a difference. I know there's a lot of people talking about that, but I hear a definite difference between the old ceramic ones, the orange drops, and the hi-fi, quote unquote hi-fi ones. They have different qualities. They sound different to me.
So, in this last year, I don't know if you guys had any supply chain issues. We definitely had supply issues. We got capacitors were okay, things like that. But in the event of we can't get supplies from China or something, what will we do? Can we make Hemel? Can you make a capacitor? Worst comes to worst, what do we do if there are no ways to get it? Can we make this stuff domestically, and can we make it boutique?
I would start a business.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, we were chatting about this on your stream the other day. I was talking about a synthesizer that I wanted, and if I can't get one, I'll build one, right?
Yeah.
And you said that's a good way to think about it. If you can't get it, you'll build it. It's interesting. I buy all of my electronic components except for the ones that are a little more specialized. Like if I need a very specific integrated circuit or op amp or something like that, I go to a place called Tata Electronics. It's a warehouse in Hong Kong or Taiwan or something. Like in Canada, we've got DigiKey, and DigiKey is great. But it's 10 times the price as ordering it from China. And I mean, that sounds huge, but it's not. I mean, if you need 5 resistors and they're 12 cents a piece, okay. But we need 1,000 resistors and they're 1.5 cents a piece when you order them from China, so it gives me all my mostly generic stuff, right? And I mean, look at look at what's going on right now in the world, right? Guitar players should be worried because where are we going to get our tubes from? Not to bring politics into it, but that area of the world where they make the tubes, people aren't happy with them right now, and they're going to have problems with exporting and manufacturing and sanctions from
And
everybody.
our Soviet capacitors.
And they're new old stuff. But I mean, how many factories in the world still make vacuum tubes? I'm pretty sure they're all in Russia. So what happens if we can't? China too? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
China's obviously perfectly politically stable, and there will never be any problems getting stuff out of China, right?
I'm just saying.
I know.
But,
I know.
but
I'm trying to make a joke, but what are we gonna do when
I
we can't get tubes anymore?
But I think Hamill actually showed us a bit of what the future may hold if the end of days comes, and he was in harvesting parts out of old something. I forget what you were breaking down, Hamill, but he was pulling parts out of something old, and I think worst comes to worst, that old VCR that you got laying around that doesn't work anymore, you're cracking that baby open and you're harvesting parts out of it, Um, but yeah,
Those
we
gigantic record players that were in those heavy oak furniture, you know what I mean? They had stereos in
yeah.
them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
When
was
back when your stereo and your TV and everything was furniture,
Yeah.
right? The bigger the better.
I was harvesting stuff from a mic mixer with XLR and XLR
Uh,
inputs, and the thing was full of BC239 transistors, which are actually the ones that were in the version 3 of the Big Muff Pi. So I I didn't
yeah.
remember that. So when I extracted them, when I salvaged them from the mixer, I thought, well, what could I do with this? So I just real quick Googled, well, BC239 circuit, and the first thing that popped up was the Big Muff Pi, and I said, oh, okay, well, let me do a Big Muff Pi and try to do it,
Ah,
to my taste. And there's also a series of, and I don't remember the name of the ICs, but there are a series of ICs that are similar to TL74s. So a quadruple op amp in the same chip. And I have like 5 of them. And I was thinking, hey, there's something I'm going to do with those 5 chips also. And they haven't cost me anything. Well, not true. I bought the mixer at an auction for $5 Canadian.
ah,
So yes, it's about 35 cents US. And so they didn't cost me nothing, but very close to. And just the time that it took me, and fortunately the ICs were socketed; they weren't even soldered, so
Oh.
easy enough. I could just
oh,
pop them up, so that's
nice.
quite easy. Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
and
this kind of a
it is a good idea to get old stuff and salvage whatever you can, whatever you want. Because I didn't
Yeah,
salvage the diodes, the resistors, the small caps. I didn't salvage those. I got plenty already. Plus, when you try to salvage them, the leads are so small that
yeah,
it's kind of hard to do anything with them anyway. So instead of salvaging those, well, I'll just go and put the rest in a recycling facility. But whatever I can salvage for use myself, I'll take them.
it's kind of a like a time-honored tradition, isn't it, for electronics geeks to go out and salvage stuff
Yeah,
like all the time. And it's not like we're talking
yeah.
about stereos and stuff. It could be microwaves or all of our electronics are built with the same components,
yep,
usually from China.
yeah,
Right?
The problem with the new stuff is they're using all the micro technology, which is super tiny. Talk about having no
Surface
leads to
mount, you
work
mean?
with.
oh,
Well,
SMD.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just super tiny stuff. But I did see those little 9-pin transformers that you were wondering about, Hamill.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, $60 a pop on eBay. I saw.
interesting, interesting. Might do a giveaway.
uh, I'd hang on to them. They actually sound like it's a pretty good, and they're used sort of specifically as a mic preamp type thing. So that when you said that what you were working on, that makes a lot of sense to me now. I was like, oh, no, where you found those?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking eventually of making myself a surround tube preamp for my surround system for the telly. So basically, what I need to have is the proper pin out for an HDMI cable that'll come out of my television, and then knowing where the woofer channel is, where the front left, front right, rear left, rear right channels are, and then from there start off preamps for all of those channels, and then eventually put that inside an amp. And I'd like to make them all lamps, so perhaps I could instead use those TD50s that I found, but I don't know. I don't know yet. I don't know. There has to be a use for them, or probably just sell them and take the money.
But that's
Actually,
interesting that those components are valuable. Like it does that's worthwhile to start salvaging components right there.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff just isn't made anymore, so they're
yeah.
just rare, and they had such a specific use. So, it might take you a while to find somebody who needs one, but it's one of the reasons why a lot of these guys who hoarded all the old, good quality tubes are sitting pretty now, because they have the old Mullards or whatever they love, and they just said, they could see the writing on the wall and said, I'll just buy up a ton of these things and stick them on the shelf, and when I need them, I'll have them. And the market on those has gone bananas, like everything
Yeah.
else, but.
And if I need some money, I'll sell some, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or trade, barter them away for something you don't have.
So there is actually kind of a topic around some of this stuff that I was interested in. I don't know if Hemel, you or Orby, if you guys ever dabbled in this stuff, but it's a thing that I have kind of fallen in love with lately, and that is the modular synthesizer, like DIY stuff.
Mhm.
When I first learned about what a modular synthesizer was, I kind of thought it was like a completely dead like technology. People didn't have them anymore. Anyone that collected modular synths, it was usually something that was from the 70s or something like that. And I mean, I knew a lot of people I went to school with that used Eurorack stuff. And because they always referred to it as Eurorack, I never knew what it was. I didn't know it was like a modular synth, right? And when I started learning about it's kind of like ham radio stuff, right? Back in the day, if you wanted to get into electronics, you'd build a ham radio.
Yeah.
And in that same era, people were building their own synthesizers. They were doing it all on perf board and building these modules and stuff like that. And it's like it was this real grassroots kind of thing that like the Eurorack form factor has kind of there are places out there you can buy DIY kits to build your own little Eurorack modules. But it commercialized it in a way that sort of seems to have taken out the glamour of the old school like DIY kind of thing. And I really got into it when I found this guy on YouTube. He's this English guy. His name is Sam, and he has a channel called Look Mum, No Computer. Because everything he does with his synthesizers is completely analog, which is I think is kind of like really neat and sort of like if we're talking electronics, it's kind of like romantic, this idea that the only thing that is happening in all of these instruments that I'm playing is like electrons. There's no computer chips or anything like that. Which as it turns out is actually a lie because they use microprocessors like Teensies and Arduinos and stuff to do some of their logic stuff. But and he got so excited about this and he thought like Eurorack right now is the king of the modular synthesizer world. And I cannot believe how expensive some of those modules are. Like if you think guitar pedals are expensive, like double the price, easy. And you're talking, someone, and it's just like an oscillator. You can't even make music with just an oscillator. You need I'm still getting all the acronyms in my head, right? That's a VCO, voltage controlled oscillator. You need your filter. You need your amplifier. You need your you need all the things anyway, right? So you by the time you finish building your like minimalistic modular synth, you've spent a couple $1,000s already. And when you could have just gone out and like bought a Korg MS-10 or something like that. But this guy, he got excited about it and he thought like, I want to perform. I want a performance kind of thing. And Eurorack is not like, it's not very rock and roll. It's like, it's the little micro cables they plug in, the 1/8 inch or whatever, right? And the little knobs and stuff. So he's like, I'm developing my own form factor. Because there were a bunch of different like standards for making modular synths, and it's just like the size of the module where you stick it in your box. Like Moog had its own kind of like standard, and like Eurorack is the thing now. And so he's like, I made my own. It's like a metric version of this other thing or whatever, and it's like big knobs, and it's all 1/4 inch jacks because he wants to rock and roll. He wants to twist the big knobs, not the little tiny dainty knobs, right? And I've listened to the music that he does. I'm like, this is so punk rock, and he has no guitars in this anywhere. It's like gnarly, and he just grabs you. And what's really cool is that, like, he did it with perf board,
Yeah,
and a handful of components. he didn't have kits. You know, he read books like this. He went through some stuff, and now he sells PCB kits on his own website of all of the modules he came up with, and all of his music is on instruments he built himself. And I don't know, there's something just really cool about that for me. And ever since I started watching him, I'm like, I want to do this. I want to build a modular synthesizer of my own. You know, I don't even know how to like. I understand the science between things like FM synthesis and AM synthesis, and I mean, I could grab another textbook all about sound synthesis, stuff I did in school. But you know, I've always sucked with synthesizers, and I still can't play a keyboard. But like, I want to do this thing because it's just neat and cool, and so DIY. And I'm like, I don't know.
Do you
I
think
I
you
have
can make a keytar with it? It has to be a baritone keytar.
wrapping my head around the concept. But I don't know. Have you guys ever run into, like, you ever done stuff with synthesizers or oscillators and filters and all that kind of stuff? I mean, it can't be a ton different from guitar pedals, other than like the voltage is really different, right? 12 volt or 15 volt when it comes to these synthesizers, as opposed to like really high Z input from, you know, your guitar cable or whatever. But I was curious about that because I'm just getting into this stuff, and I have the confidence to do it because of the guitar or the pedal building and the Arduino stuff. You know, if I can find a schematic, and of course these things are widely available because people have been making these things since the 60s. I don't know. I was curious. I would really want to know if you guys have played around with that kind of stuff. What your experience is with that? Because I'm kind of in a bit of a love affair with the idea.
I was giving a long time. Oh, go ahead, Greg. Sorry, Orbiter.
So I've stayed away from the synthesizer keyboard when I've got a friend that specializes in that sort of world, and anybody who comes with me with like even the minorest of issues with a keyboard, I'm like, call this guy. But the modular thing is something that has snuck its way into the amp world for the guitar players, which is a cool thing. Somebody you might want to talk to, though, who's on here and is in my stream pretty regularly, is Deltomics. If you're familiar with him at all, he actually has designed some keyboards. He's like an electronics whiz type cat also, and a very cool guy also. He is in Canada. He's an amazing piano player, but I was just chatting with him through my stream the other day. It turns out he's designed some keyboards and some other, you know, elements of exactly kind of down the road you're looking to travel. I would say strike up a conversation with him.
I think that's one of the things that I think is interesting, like what you were saying, immersive, is I think there's a lot of creativity that comes when you're working within constraints. You know, when you kind of constrain yourself to like, I'm just using this tech, or I'm just using this guitar, and, or, you know, and what can I get out of it? And then sometimes it seems like you're limiting yourself, but then new possibilities can kind of open up through exploration of it, because it kind of forces you to kind of come up with creative solutions of like, well, if I want that sound, how would I get it? You know? And it's I think that's what's kind of intriguing about doing stuff like that, is just like, oh, okay, I have this piece of tech, what can I do with it?
Well, I have a Korg Poly 800 at home, which is this old keyboard that was given to me a couple of years ago, and I started looking at all the different mods that could be done to it, and they're quite easy. I mean, it's just a resistor, a few caps, a pot that you add, SPST switch just to turn it off, turn the mod off or on, and it looks really easy to do. And you were asking if I dabbled into this. Well, I found the schematics for a mini Moog at one point, And
Cool.
yeah, I figured those sell for like 3,000 minimum. And why not just build one? I'm probably going to save a lot of money if I
Yeah.
just build one. I don't even have to have it in the same box, or looking similar to that. I just need to have, the pots and the different entries in a solid thing. It could even be made of wood, not even aluminum or anything. Find a
Yeah.
keyboard, and I'd be good. But
A DIY Moog would be awesome, dude.
yeah, but it's in the project. It's in the project, but it's
That's like what I was talking about with Hank the other day in his stream. I really, really, I mean, like I say, I can't even play keyboard. The interesting thing about building a modular synth is you kind of like you've got this idea, you want to go for it. Is it going to be like a lead instrument? Is it going to be some kind of weird spacey ambient thing, and you can kind of cater your modules to it? I know that for like a lead instrument, if I was going to use a synthesizer, a modular synthesizer as a way to like basically simulate an entire band or something like that for a piece of music, I would want something that was like a little lead instrument, right? And so what I really want is I want a polyvox. And that's that big chunky Soviet era synthesizer. They're not like unobtainium rare, but there's not a whole ton of them. They're not too expensive in terms of music gear. It's like a couple grand on eBay Canadian to find one, But on the other hand, there's also a company called Erica Synths that, I mean, the uh the schematic is out there, right?
yeah.
And so you got this company that they build the modules of the certain sections of the synthesizer that you can buy in Eurorack format, or you can buy the DIY kits. And it's like, well, okay, if I don't have the money to buy this Polyvox, they're on eBay all the time. You can search it up right now. You'll find a page full of them. They're not cheap, but they're not like Moog expensive either, right? They're just kind of this like curio that certain people kind of get really interested in. And I thought, well, I mean, if the circuit is the circuit, it's going to sound like it sounds. And what if I just like built the modules, and instead of turning them into modular synth modules, just hardwire them together, put them in a chassis, throw a keyboard on it, and bam, I've got a Polyvox.
Yeah.
Right? If you can't find it, build it. Like I think that's kind of the power. That's like this whole conversation, I think, to me, that's what really really gets me going. I have this pathological problem where I want to be a contrarian all the time. And I think that fuels me sometimes when I just like cuz DIY in so many ways is like you're such a rebel when you DIY stuff. And people, our world, it wants you to buy stuff. They want you to buy stuff that's going to break so you buy it again. I hate to get all Tyler Durden on everybody and talk like that, but it's the truth, right? And it's like learning these skills, like what do we do in modern society that doesn't involve a crap ton of electronics? Whether it's, I repaired a TV for my kids once. It wouldn't start. I don't know why. I popped it open, looked at the main board. It had 3 electrolytic capacitors that had popped, little black ooze on top, right? So I desoldered them, went down to the local electronic supply store. I had no idea how to read the values. I was like, I need these. And they were like, here, these will work. I was like, okay. I soldered them back on the board. TV booted up. I got a 40-inch TV for, I don't know. They gouged me on those capacitors. They charged me like 10 times what they should have. So I paid like a whole $4. I was pissed. Should have been 40 cents,
Yeah.
And I fixed the TV, and it didn't go to the landfill, and I had a TV, and it's I think I'm gonna use the word romantic all the time, but like that's the romance of this whole thing for me in a lot of ways, is that as we learn about this stuff, we become more self-sufficient in a world that is surrounded by electronics. And whether we're talking about music or I'm not going to say go fix your microwave. You'll probably kill yourself if you try and do that. But
Oh, my buddy Shelton, I was hanging out with him just the other night, and he totally opened up and fixed his microwave. And it's funny that you said that because I was going to say that when you started talking about your TV. But he also is a guy who could like take your carburetor apart and build it back together without any sort of, book or anything to follow. He's just one of those guys. But yeah, I just want to say like that's one of the things that I feel really good about like the younger generation because I agree we've kind of coming from this thing that's been happening for the past while where the generation before me was like if your toaster broke, you took it out to the garage, you took it apart, you fixed it, you put it back on the counter, and you had it for another 20 years. Nowadays, people throw it in the garbage and buy a new one because you can get one on an Amazon for like $11 or something, crazy. But the younger generation now is all about being super green, recycling everything, using everything, upcycling things. And if that is the future, if that's the direction that we are going and the youth is bringing us, I say God bless them and bring it on because that's so much better than just filling the landfill with a bunch of plastic.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the things I appreciate about your stream, Hemel. I found it very It feels like kind of like an educational stream where it's just like this is how the things work, and I don't know if you're doing that on purpose on it, but it feels
Yes.
like I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
No.
Yeah.
There's a tag educational on the stream that I do, and that's what I strive for. It's to be as educational as I can and teach people stuff. And when I see people asking me questions about what I'm doing and what's this, and I had the pleasure to repeat 5 or 6 times how a transistor worked during a stream, during the LPB1 stream. And I had the pleasure of repeating it because many people were asking me, well, what happens to the sound and how does that work? And why does the transistor make the sound go louder or bigger? So it was quite fun to do that. And the other thing that I want to start doing also is repairing old consoles, old gaming consoles. I have a couple of Atari 2600s. I have some old NES, and I just noticed Immersive's reaction to that.
You see what's behind me over here, Hemel?
Is that an old Mac?
No, it's an old IBM Aptiva.
Oh God, really? Okay, yeah. Kind of hard to see.
It's a Pentium 1. I'm gonna stream with this thing when I get a capture card because
Nice.
I'm all
There's
about
this
it. I'm all about it.
crazy guy on Twitch. I think his name is Weird Paul. He has this bowl cut hair, a little pinch, and he streams with an old Sony Handycam that he got. I think he puts it in like an input card or whatever through the RCA connectors on the Handycam, and that's what he streams like. So his stream is all grainy and stuff, and he said that everything that he has is all from the 80s or 90s for streaming, and he said that's the way he recycled things.
My
And
parents bought that computer in 1996, kept it in their basement for 20 years.
wow.
That's awesome.
Now it's mine.
I wish I had my parents' Tandy computer that they had in 1985.
Nice.
The old Radio Shack Tandy computers. I mean,
I'm
Yeah.
a little young for that one.
there wasn't even a hard disk in it. It was just floppy. What is it? 5 1/4
5 1/4,
inch.
yeah.
Five
My
and a
grandpa had a
quarter
computer
inch.
like that. No hard drive.
No hard drive. 4 kilobytes of RAM,
Yeah.
and that was a lot. There was an upgrade to 8 kilobytes, but the card was like as big as my head. That was the memory card upgrade that you had to put inside. A TRS-80. Yeah, Manny just wrote in chat. Yeah, with the cassette tape to boot. Yeah, press play on tape.
Oh yeah, those old tape drives are cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, the dog's barking.
Emmett.
Emmett, come here. Anyway,
Yeah.
does anybody have any questions for these gentlemen? Any tech-related questions? If anybody has anything.
Rage says he has an 8-inch floppy drive somewhere.
Ooh.
Man, I've seen some of those discs,
Yeah.
and they held even less than the 5 1/4-inch drives. They're like huge floppies. That's old school, man.
That used to be my stripper name. That was an 8-inch floppy drive.
8-inch floppy drive.
We have an old Nintendo here. We have a nice selection of games here in the shop. We have on the board, we were keeping track of our Duck Hunt scores, and we found there was somebody dropped off this old Nintendo, and then we were like, man, we need one of the old like the old TVs to run the light gun. And the musicians next door were throwing out a TV that they were using as just like a stage prop, and we're like, perfect. And then it got really intense around here, where it was like for a week straight, it was nothing but Duck Hunt. I'd like to, until I just cleaned up. I was like 100,000 points ahead of everyone, and then they all gave up. But that ended that. But
You understand why it only works with CRT, though, right? It doesn't work with LEDs. Because actually the guns actually capture the electrons that are coming off
really?
of the and that's how they
The gun basically takes a picture of the TV when you pull the trigger.
Oh
Yeah,
yes, because then it goes black and then it's white, and then if it sees white in the gun, then it's a hit, right?
Well, if it sees the I think they're brown ducks, aren't they?
I thought for a split second that the screen turns black and then the duck is white. It's like an alpha channel. And then if the gun sees white, then it's a hit. I thought that's
I don't remember exactly how it works. Something to do with the way the lines scan or something. I don't remember. I used to know how it works. Manny's actually got a pretty good, very practical question that I don't know the answer to.
What is it?
Do they make audio pots for guitars with built-in treble bleed circuit? Because he's sick of soldering capacitors for his tone knob.
Is a good question. I was just typing out an answer to that, but yeah, not that I am aware of. I know you can buy them with somebody else has done the pre-soldering of the cap and the resistor on there for you for extra money, which is probably not well spent, but wouldn't be a bad idea to come up with that though.
Prototyping, Manny.
But they're capable of making switchable pots with small circuits added to them, so I don't understand why they couldn't do that.
Yeah, it can be done, no doubt about that. Just no one that I know of has done it yet.
You could
Pretty niche.
you could design a PCB. Right. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm going to start doing is some of you guys like I guess I'm gonna keep plugging Mad Bean, but lots of these like pedal PCB companies for the DIY guys, they will sell like a little board with 9 like you gotta snap them off kind of thing, like 3 PDT PCBs on them. So you stick your triple pole switch in, solder it on, and then you don't have to wire up the bloody switch. I hate doing that.
Yes.
Like that is the worst thing in the world. For me, I'm surprised I haven't destroyed more switches trying to do that and fiddling with it with my like ham hands, I guess. But you know, you just grab that little PCB, stick it on there, solder it in, and then input, output, there you go. You could do the same thing with a pot with a little spot where you could solder in a capacitor. That'd be a really good idea. Then the traces are on the PCB, and you don't have to deal with wires and stupid stuff like that.
There's quite a few pedals that work with that way now, whereas there's just a PCB that goes over the foot switch instead of separate wiring.
Yeah, and it's all held by the pots and the 3PDT switch because the pots are also soldered on the same PCB.
Yeah.
And I just recently repaired a Morley ABY switcher. And I didn't have a 2PDT handy, so I used a 3PDT instead and used 2 of the 3 poles. But I guess I overburned one of them. So it actually couldn't work, and I couldn't find why. I couldn't find out why. And eventually I found that I had overheated one of the pins on the 3PDT. So it's a good thing it was a 3PDT. I still had a spare pole to work with. And so I worked with that one, and the pedal's repaired now.
If you ever need any 2PDs, you need switches, give me a call. I got a couple laying around.
I declare Momo to be winner of chat today.
Oh, what has he done? Momo's the winner of every chat.
The Chinese won't make them until someone else does.
Oh, it's so true. Or till we subcontract them to make them for us, and then they'll steal the idea and make them themselves.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Well, I think
there you go, Manny. All you got to do is invent it.
Yeah.
And then like start working on patenting it so that they can steal it, and then they'll manufacture it for you. Done. Job done.
There you go.
Just gave Momo my 200 hanks from yesterday.
Oh, nice.
For that nice one.
Yeah, that's where you guys will see the Hank Butt guitars or Hank Spud. One of those two names is going to come out at some point, and there'll be some knockoffs coming out. That's the word on the street. I think Momo's behind it.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. But it was really good chatting with you guys. I think I'm going to wrap it up unless somebody else has something they want to say.
Did you guys see what Rage said in chat?
What's he saying?
What did Rage?
Just wanted to encourage each one of these guys to keep streaming this type of tech. I think it has value in at least our guitar community. Thanks all of you guys for your good streams.
Well, thanks, Rage.
That's great. Thanks.
Appreciate you, Rage.
Yeah. I think it's good, and it's a great component to like what we do as guitar builders, because, like I was saying, I'm very ignorant of the electronic side. I'm approaching it as a woodworker, as an artisan, and this is a component that it's not in my toolbox, so I have to lean heavily on you guys. When I need to know something or learn more or be directed into something. So I really appreciate it too. And definitely, if anybody is interested, give these guys a follow. Orbiter Guitars, Immersive Sinner, and Hemel Audio, all resources of information, and all of them are very willing to share with you when they're on. So.
I did get a new toy in the mail today.
Oh, what did you get?
Ooh.
Well, hold on, I'll show you.
Okay.
I need to start acting like a maker again on
Yeah,
stream. Playing
yeah.
video games.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna
immersive.
get you, Hank. I'm just gonna get you to do my logo. I'll just get you to do it.
Oh, cool. It's going to have lightning bolts and skulls and flames and pentagrams.
Can it have snakes too?
Snakes driving hot rods. Ooh, what's that?
Okay. Perfect. Ooh, what is that?
That's my new pickup winder.
Oh, everybody's getting pickup winders. Everyone's
We
getting
didn't even really talk about like winding pickups.
Oh, man.
The whole stream.
What are you going to do? Are you going to do a pickup winding stream?
I'm sure I'll be winding on stream. I've got to figure it out. I'm new to this, but I have a ton of broken pickups laying around that need repair. I've ordered some parts to make some buckers of my own. We'll see how it goes. I just it's something, as we talked last time when I was on with you, Hank, it's something that I've been wanting to do for about 20 years. And I just said, why haven't I done that yet? I got all kinds of spare time. Not. But I figured, if I don't jump in and do it now, it probably won't happen. So
it's a good.
So
it's an excellent time to do it. Rage just got his pickup winder. Jer just got his pickup winder. So everybody's winding pickups. It's the cool thing to do. It's what the cool kids are doing. I don't have one.
I don't know about the cool kids, but I did bypass the CNC for now. I'm going strictly hand wound
Yeah.
until I learn. I want to learn how it's done. I want to get my hands all dirty and grimy and figure out how it's done. And then
I
we'll see. It could be a huge fail. We don't know. I've got high standards. It's gonna be hard for me to. It's gonna be difficult.
I got a YouTube channel you need to check out, Orbiter. Everybody should check this guy out. Heavy Metal ATC. This guy, he's doing the series of he's building a guitar using like his mom's old oak table. He winds his own pickups. He uses like chunks of like iron nail for his like pole pieces, and he winds them on his grandma's sewing machine. He's doing it all just like as low tech as he possibly can, and it's really great stuff. I've learned a ton of stuff from his channel, and he's really entertaining.
And I
Um,
think I've run across him. I've watched just about every pickup making video there is on YouTube. My brain has swollen, and I think I might have lost a couple of years off my life because of it. But you know, we'll see. Also, I went back and started reading cover to cover that book from Jason Lawler. Well, book that manual,
The
and
Bible.
man,
It's more
you
like
got a
the
copy of
Bible.
it? Wow.
He has one.
Yeah.
He showed us on stream.
That is unobtainium. That
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like you
There
gotta
was one
protect
on
that thing with an arsenal, man. People are gonna come after you for that thing.
there was one on eBay for like $400. I was like, what? Um,
Only
it's
400?
pretty. Yeah, it's small. I think it's in the other
Tricky
room, but
audiobook.
there is some valuable info in there, but it's very streamlined. It's not a ton of detail. It's very dragnet, just the facts, ma'am. It's like it's really streamlined. But um where did I get it? I bought it from Stu Mack 20 years ago when they just had it as, I mean, it's like, probably cost me $19 or something. And I was all getting ready to build my own winder and do the whole thing. And then, the wah pedal thing took off and my business just got super busy. And I have a friend that winds pickups. So whenever that kind of came up, I just went, here, call this guy. I don't have time. But now I'm going to burn the midnight oil and figure it out. It's time. And then who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, 20 years later, I know, Momo. And I rub it in. Rub it in, brother. Rub it in.
It was just waiting for this moment. It's one of those things.
Yeah, it was
What
curing.
I've-
like
Yeah. What I've learned is that it's all about the recipe, really. Once you learn the mechanics of it, it's just a coil, right? It's the recipe. It's like what type of magnets, how many winds, what gauge of wire, uh,
it's
all
also
that stuff.
the winding technique, how you wind it onto the
Yes.
bobbin is a
Yeah.
huge part of that factor. The
That
rest of
too.
it, I think as Hamill was talking about it, and you're referring to most perfectly and most aptly, is that the ingredients are all well known. It's how you cook it up.
Right. What
So
I hear,
yeah,
people usually start with like a Gibson PAF because everyone knows the recipe for that, and then go
Yeah.
from there. What I want to do is see if I can spare $200 to destroy a Duncan JB and reverse engineer that thing because that's my favorite pickup. I'll base everything off that and move on from there, and
Yeah.
but that's the proprietary part of pickups. That's why nobody shares the rest. That's why that Lawler book is so sought after, right? Because they stopped publishing it, and now everyone that has one is like, well, we're not going to share the information, partially because they've got it, but also kind of out of respect for Lawler because he decided not to share that information anymore, right? And
Yeah, he gives some basic some generalizations about how to get to certain you know uh the hotter pickups, and it has to do with what wire you use and what magnets you use, and it's interesting how people have different takes on that. One of the guys that pickups that I really like and use is a guy from Voodoo Pickups, this guy Peter Florence, super cool cat. And he does some like very PAF sounding pickups, but puts a bigger magnet in instead of overwinding it, so you still get that total PAF tone but hotter output, and which I thought was really really smart. Um, so yeah, yeah, it's gonna be a rabbit hole of enormous sizes. But I'm anxious. I was giddy like a school kid when it showed up finally today. I was like, oh, here we go, it's on now.
I'll let you guys
Mojo is
figure
in
it
the
out.
recipe, and that's what everybody guards so tightly.
Yeah.
It is their own recipe, right?
I'll just wait for
Yeah.
you guys to figure it out, and then you let me know. But
Yeah.
that's exciting stuff. Yeah. So everybody, if you want to kind of keep up with us, you can check out. We have a group Discord called the Luthier Uprising. There is a electronic section in there. And we're all in there posting our stuff. Immersive and Orbiter also have their own personal Discords that you can check out as well. But this is the big group one that I posted there. So if you have electronics questions or want to show anything, check out, and you can find us all from there. That's a good starting point to kind of find people and kind of explore guitar related stuff. So anyway, I think we touched on everything, and we should do this again sometime. So you guys, thanks a lot for being here. Thanks for chatting, and yeah, we'll do it again. Everybody, check out Orbiter Guitars, Immersive Sinner, and Hemel Audio.
You got something
thanks
lined
for
up for next week?
Lined up for next week? No, is all I could do to get this week lined up. I was thinking about I want to do more themes. I like this format where it's kind of like, okay, let's get the tech guys on talking tech. I might do an acoustic one with Manny and Babumstead. Yeah, might do. I don't know. We can do also music themed ones where it's kind of like talking about the hardware kind of around certain genres of music or something like that. If anyone has any ideas for good discussions, let me know. There's also a podcast section in the Discord. But if any of you guys are like, hey, I want to talk to Hemel about this thing for 7 hours, I'm game. You know? I don't care. So it's all good. But yeah, I want to kind of do more group stuff. And I think that's really good. We can talk black metal, Momo. Me and Momo can talk black metal. You know.
Get Momo talking about K-pop is what you
Yeah,
gotta do.
K-pop and black metal. It'll be an
Yeah.
interesting stream. But or I can do a butt rock with immersive. And
I thought we were supposed to have a. Wasn't Tari supposed to host our like
oh, yeah.
the opinion section?
The opinions, yeah, I need to have Tari giving his opinion. But there's lots of potential. There's a lot we can do, and yeah, it's fun. It's a good format for that, and yeah. So next week I'll figure out something, but there will be a next week. There will be something. I'll get Manny and Babumstead. We can talk about acoustic guitars.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I was saying I haven't been building acoustic guitars, and I've been slamming. I offended Babumstead the other night. I was like, "Are you aware that the acoustic guitar is the #1 instrument of college dropouts and the unemployed?" Whereas the electric guitar has generated billions in revenue worldwide for the 80 years of its creation. So, I can get him to defend it. I'll do a harsh stream defend acoustic guitars. I'm all electrics now. All electrics. Harsh opinions, electric guitars.
It's okay. Don't listen, Mark. You're okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Burn.
Yeah. But anyway, Great chatting with you guys. I'm going to shut it down. All you guys have a good rest of your weekend. Orb, are you streaming tomorrow?
Yeah, on as usual tomorrow at noon Pacific time.
Sweet. And Hemel, are you streaming tomorrow as well?
I am streaming at around 2 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, cool. And what are you up to? Immersive, when are you getting back into the guitar stuff?
Like I said, I gotta get my logo. I gotta get my branding done. That's what's
okay.
holding me
I'll
back
get on
right
that.
now.
We'll do it on stream Monday. I'll draw your logo. I'll take some time.
but
I'll
no,
take a few moments.
Tomorrow, my kids are coming to visit for a week.
Oh, yes, that's
I haven't
right.
I haven't seen them since Christmas. So
Oh,
if I'm streaming this week, it's gonna be
wow.
it's gonna be Pokemon, Fortnite, and Roblox probably with them. So
okay. Well, you guys have a wonderful Easter. It is a holiday this weekend, I guess. I totally forgot. But you guys have a wonderful Easter, and we'll catch you again next time. So have a good night, everyone. We'll
Thank
see
you for
again.
having us.
Yeah.
cheers,
Thanks
guys.
a lot. Good to see you guys. That was a fun chat.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Yeah, very fun.
Okay.